this. So this is a fun story. Let's just jump in. Context is key, but I'll add that as we go through this here as we start. So start in 5:13, excuse me. Y'all with me? I didn't lose anybody there, did I? That one too hard. 5:13, interesting story. We talked last week about circumcision, and if you missed it, boy, did you miss out, right? Amen? It's good stuff, all right? Always fun to preach on circumcision, and just to see y'all's faces just for the first 5 minutes, like, oh, is he going to keep saying that word over and over, all right? I brought my mom with me, all right? No. So we have this idea, because it starts with when Joshua was near Jericho, all right? Now, why is Joshua alone? And I want to throw Caleb in the mix, just me. I want to say when Joshua and Caleb were near Jericho, but Caleb doesn't get a lot of press, all right? But in my vision of this, Caleb is next to him, and they're hanging out, okay? And they're the only two guys kind of wandering around, meandering about, because why? What's with the other rest of the 600,000 men? They are recovering, shall we say, all right? So Joshua's guy, I got nothing better to do, all right? Everybody's down and out for the next couple of days. I'm going to go walk around. I'm going to go wander around. I'm going to see what's going on, okay? So he goes. When Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Good thing, bad thing? Good thing, bad thing? You look up and there's a man, all right, with a drawn sword. You may want to pause here. You don't walk right into that one, okay? That gets your attention very quickly, okay? There are pretty much two other times in the Bible where this comes up, all right? We have when Adam and Eve are given the heave-ho out of the Garden of Eden, you can't come in anymore, and there's a cherub there with a flaming sword whirling about, all right? That's bad enough, okay? But also, when Balaam is riding his donkey, all right, and he's going down the path, and the donkey kind of runs him into the bushes, all right? And he starts beating the donkey. What are you doing? And the donkey starts talking back to him. And basically the story is the donkey goes, hey, you didn't see the angel with the drawn sword? All right? Exact same imagery here, all right? The donkey was smart enough to get out of the way. Joshua, not quite that smart because he just keeps walking right into it, but seems to be a little cautious, all right? So Joshua approached him and he asked an awesome question. You ready? Are you for us or for our enemies? Does anybody have a different word there for enemies? Louder. Adversary, okay. In the Greek, it's the sort of the prefix anti, which means kind of against or opposite, all right? Not so much I'm against you, but I am opposite of you, okay? In the Greek, it also brings out the idea of that he's asking the question here, when it says, are you for us? That language is not in the text. What he's asking, literally in the Greek, the Septuagint, is, are you ours? Do you see the difference between this? Are you for us versus, are you ours or are you theirs? Our opponents, all right? Now, this is an interesting question because you know what the answer was? No. It's not neither, it's no, all right? You go to a restaurant. There you go. Connor, you go to a nice restaurant, all right? You're fancy now, you're rich now, you got a job and everything, all right? You got out of college, all right? Sir, would you like steak or lobster? And you say what? No, you say yes. Yes, I will take both, all right? Yes, you're poor enough, you will say no, all right, for a while, all right? But this is the idea. So the question has a presumption to it, right? The presumption is what? God is either mine or he's theirs. And God wants to make it very clear that's not how we roll with this thing. I am not yours and I'm not theirs. I'm me, all right? So don't go there. When you say, are you ours or theirs, our enemies, our opponents? No. So when you get a either or question, you get a no, you probably want to shut up and listen because something smart is about to happen, right? Y'all with me? All right? So Joshua is smart enough to be able to just step back and go, okay, evidently I have the wrong presumption going on here, right? He says, no, he replied, I have now come as, which is it's an interesting construct in the text, as, like, all right, symbolically of the commander of the Lord's army. So all we know is we have a man, drawn sword. Joshua approaches. Are you ours or our opponents? No. You need to stop asking that question because that was just a bad question, okay? But I have come to you in this moment as, like, the commander of the Lord's army. And you're about to go to battle. And I'm the commander. And I'm not yours, and I'm not theirs. I'm me. The only question is, are you mine? Are you with me? The question is not, God, are you with us? God's asking, no, the question is, are you with me? Far too many times we see this in politics. We see this in politics, and we go out there and we go, we can tell God is on our side. I mean, we saw this in the Crusades. The worst part about the Crusades was we were being so presumptuous to say, no, we have to go and we have to conquer Jerusalem and take Jerusalem back from the Muslims. And I'm just sitting there going, you know what? God gave up Jerusalem in 70 AD. And we thought we'll get God on our side. We'll do this cool stuff for God's stuff and all this stuff because we want God to be on our side. And God's like, no. The question is, are you on my side? And this is this beautiful moment he's having with this guy. So Joshua, smartly, all right, bows his face to the ground in worship and asks him, what does my Lord, all right? Now, in your text, it should have not all caps, right? Everybody look at your text, all right? What does my Lord want to say to his servant? When it's in small letters and not all caps, when it's all caps, it's the word Yahweh. It would be, what does Yahweh, God, Jehovah, want to say to your servant? No, that's not what this is. When it's in the lowercase, it's Adonai. Okay, everybody say Adonai. Adonai, it means just simply a common word for Lord, okay? Now, we don't generally use the word Lord in common language here in the United States, right? But in 1611, when the King James translation was put out there, did they use the word Lord fairly often? See where we have this word, okay? So Lord would mean, it's the Greek word kurios, it means master, all right? It means one who is in authority. I always like to ask people, what's your relationship with Jesus Christ? They say, well, he's my friend, he's my pal, he's my buddy. No, he's not. He's your Lord, he's your kurios, he's your Adonai. And you are the slave, you are the doulos, you are the servant. So when he asks you to do something, your response is what? Let me think about it. Let me see if that makes sense for me. Let me see if I can fit that into my schedule. Or do you say, yes, Lord, all right? Just as Mary did when she was called, all right? So this is that idea. He bows his face to the ground, smart move, in worship. What does my Lord want to say to his servant? And the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, remove the sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so. Does that sound any familiar to you at all? Yeah. Have you noticed how we kind of have a do-over on a lot of these things? All right? What God was trying to do with the Exodus, with the Passover, the Exodus, sending them into the Promised Land, they botched, right? Send the spies in. They're too big. We can't do it. All right, go wander. All right, 40 years later, take two. Let's do this all over again. We get the same kind of rhythm. We get the crossing of the Jordan River when we had the crossing of the Red Sea. We have the burning bush. Now we have Joshua getting these instructions, okay? Now, unfortunately, chapter 6 starts with a sort of a little parenthetical phrase, okay? And I say unfortunately because I think what we do is we lose the rhythm and we lose the continuity of what's going on in the scene, all right? So don't lose that. If you need to put a little parentheses around verse 1 in chapter 6, do that. If you need to put an arrow pointing to from the end of, or in 15 down to verse 2, good. That'll help you read it right, okay? Because the conversation continues, okay? It doesn't stop. Oh, chapter's over. Put my Bible down and go to work, all right? Why? Because chapters are for quitters. All right? Don't stop when you get to the end of a chapter. Stop when God said, that's enough. You can't handle any more today. All right? Chapters are for quitters. Don't ever forget that. All right? Especially when you're reading Joshua 5, because the conversation continues. Now, Jericho was strongly fortified because of the Israelites. It was strongly shut up because it was like, no one leaving, no one entering. You see how I'm saying that's a little parentheses around that? Now, pick the story back up. Joshua is there. He's got his shoes off, barefoot, right there in front of the commander of the Lord's army. But then, what does verse 2 say? Does it say the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua? No, it says what? The Lord. And how is it spelled? All caps, which means Yahweh, Jehovah. Now, wasn't it the man with the drawn sword? And now it's the Lord. Okay? We get a couple of occasions like these. These are what we call, fancy word here, is a theophany. Theo, meaning God, theos. Phanos, which means an appearance or illuminating. Okay? So it's an appearance of God. We get this in Genesis 18. He shows up. The three show up to Abraham. All right? And he's there, and they're like, hey, you're going to have a kid. It's going to be great. Awesome. All right? And in that midst, you get these three visitors, and then all of a sudden, it's the Lord speaking. Same idea here. Okay? This is a theophany where God shows up in the form of this man with a drawn sword. All right? And then it changes the language to the Lord is saying this. Okay? Now, some people will argue this is a Christophany, okay, versus a theophany. Theophany simply means God appeared in some form that he could relate to him. Some people argue this is a Christophany, where it was actually the person of Christ who shows up. All right? I don't see a whole lot of evidence, but I don't have time to argue with people about Christophany versus theophany, right? And we shouldn't really care that much, okay? It was just really cool because God shows up, because the next verse says, the Lord, Jehovah, Yahweh, said to Joshua, all right? Now get up hold of this. Look, I have handed Jericho, literally, I have given into your hands. That's a good thing, right? How much work do you have to do when someone gives something into your hands? None, zero. Just thank you. That's your response, right? You gave it into my hands. All right, I've handed Jericho, its king, its fighting men, over to you. I'm just going to give them to you, all right? You don't have to do really much of anything. Here's my instructions, though. Verse 3. March around the city with all the men of war, circling the city one time, and do this for 6 days. Can you see Joshua? All right, march around the city, everybody. One time, just one time. Yep, one time, and do it for 6 days. All right, 6 days. All right, got it. Okay? More instructions, verse 4. Have 7 priests carry 7 ram's horn trumpets. Shofar. All right, this is our word shofar here. All right? In front of the ark, but on the 7th day, march around the city 7 times, and while the priests blow the trumpets, while the priests blow the trumpets, when there is a prolonged, drawn out blast of the horn, and you hear the shofar sound, have all the people give a mighty shout. Then the city wall will collapse, and the people will advance, each man straight ahead. All right, so march around the city one time, 6 days. All right, 7th day, march around 7 times. How many priests carrying trumpets? 7 priests carrying trumpets. Got to have 4 carrying the ark. All right, doing the math on this. All right, and then when we hear the prolonged, the drawn-out blast, we're supposed to yell, a ruah, all right? In the Army or the Marines, what is it, oorah, all right? Yes, some of my military people, all right? This is not oorah, it's ruah, all right? This is a mighty shout. And when you do that, the walls, these massively fortified walls, maybe even double-walled, we're not sure. Archaeology is saying that it was a double wall. They're going to fall down, and everybody's going to rush in just from all around it. What's Joshua thinking in this moment? A lot of people go with this, oh, he was thinking, how weird is that? How odd is this? Nope. Exactly, that's what I'm thinking he was thinking, all right? What has he seen? What has Joshua seen over the last 40 years? Just in the last 40 years, he's been hanging out with God, doing this thing. Moses was with her most of the time. He's seen all the plagues, all right? He's seen the Red Sea, water coming from the rock. He's seen the pillar of fire scoot over their head and go in between them and the enemies. He's seen nations wiped out. Just in the last year or so, he saw them defeat Sihon and Og, two kings who were thought to be unbeatable. When they get done with those two guys, they need to go across the Jordan River, which we don't know how big it was, maybe a quarter mile wide. We just don't know, all right? Overflowing its banks. When the priests stepped into it, what happened? The water piled up in a heap to their right. All this water rushed down. They walk across. They make little stone piles out there to go, we got to mark this thing down because this was awesome, all right? They get into the camp. A man with a drawn sword appears to him. He goes, are you ours or theirs? He goes, no, bad question. Start over. And he gives him a plan of, here's the plan. March, 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 blow the trumpet, yell, walls are going to fall, you're going to go kill everybody. And Joshua goes, this is going to be awesome. It's like that kid on Incredibles, all right? You remember that kid that's like, that was awesome, all right? That's the imagery I get, because I believe Joshua was a profoundly faithful man. I don't think there was a bone in Joshua's body where he went, I'm not sure about that. Because what had he seen? What had he experienced? What had he understood? What had he processed? And this is why Bible study is so crucial in the life of a believer. You get into a situation and you're going, I just don't know how God's going to handle that. You'll go, well, how about read the Bible every now and then, and you'll see 1,000 stories of how he did it. You're just trying to go at this life all by yourself, just stick finger up in there. I wonder how God's going to do this today. I don't know if God can do that. Read the Bible. There's 1,000 stories in there. This is a horrible dust collector. You with me? It's a horrible dust collector, all right? But that's what we do with our Bible most of the time. I love people. You get into a situation. My mom is like this. You get into a situation, have something happen, and you go, this is going on. And she goes, well, that's just like it was here in this Bible, in this text. This is how it was in this text. This is how it was in this text. You should go read this text. I want to be around those people. I don't want to be around people who are just going, well, I don't know what God. And you tell them a story, a very basic story from the Bible, and they go, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, how long have you been a Christian? And how long have you been reading? You've been able to read since you were like 5? And now you're 63 and you don't know these stories? Joshua was not like that. I think Joshua thought this was going to be awesome. Look at what happens next. So, I love it. Anytime, anybody ever use your full name? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? When parents use your full name, middle name included, that generally gets bad at some point there, all right? Because especially when you have a nickname, like a lifelong nickname like Bubba, like I have, all right? When I hear Joseph Allen Rainwater, I still cringe, all right? I don't care what, I see it on a letter, all right? Some form letter of some business. I'm like, ooh, I don't want to hear that altogether. But this is awesome because every time Joshua, son of Nun, is mentioned, it's like, look out, Joshua's going for it. Joshua's about to do something awesome. So we get this message. And this is why I don't think Joshua doubted for a second. He's like, this is going to be great. So Joshua, son of Nun, summoned the priests and said to them, take up the Ark of the Covenant, have 7 priests carry 7 trumpets in front of the Ark of the Lord. Now, I always wonder if he took volunteers. How did you get to be one of the 7? I also wonder, did they rotate? Did you go, okay, you got it yesterday. I get it tomorrow, all right? So we have just 7 priests carrying it, or if it was like the MVPs, the older guys, whatever it was, all right? The 7 priests, and they're like, all right, we're going to do this. Who's got the ark? You 4 guys, y'all got the ark. We're going to carry the trumpets, all right? And they're like, and what are we supposed to do with them? Oh, we're just going to march around the city once. And then what? Oh, that's all. We're going to do that for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, we're going to go all the way around 7 times. We're going to blow the trumpet. You guys are going to blow the trumpet. Ark will be right there, all right? Everybody's going to shout. Walls are going to fall in. I'm not sure they were on board with Joshua as much as Joshua was on board with Joshua. You see what I'm saying? They've seen a lot. I don't know how much they've seen. Now he goes to the people. Verse 7, he said to the people, move forward, march around the city, and have the armed troops go ahead of the ark of the Lord. Okay? So you got to get the rhythm. Okay? We're going to march this way. Okay? So you have the armed guard in front, the armed troops. Okay? And behind them, you got the 7 priests blowing the trumpets. And we're marching this way. We're going this way. Behind them, you got the 4 guys carrying the Ark of the Covenant. Okay? And then behind them, you got the rear guard. I don't know if those are good soldiers or bad soldiers if you're in the back. All right? I don't know. Just that's where they are. And they're marching around the city. And they're marching around the city. So let's go to it. Where am I? 8. After Joshua had spoken to the people, 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord moved forward and blew the trumpets. The ark of the Lord's covenant followed them. While the trumpets were blowing, the armed troops went in front of the priests who blew the trumpets. The rear guard went behind the ark. But Joshua had commanded the people, do not shout or let your voice be heard. Do not let one word, debar, logos, come out of your mouth until the time I say shout. Then you are to shout, to ruah. So the ark of the Lord was carried around the city, circling it once. And then they returned to the camp and spent the night there. What were the conversations like that night? What do you think the conversations were like? So what were their instructions? Armed guard, 7 trumpets, 4 guys carrying the Ark of the Covenant, rear guard, marching around the city. And doing what? It's quiet. Because what normally would happen if you are laying siege to a city, we see this when King Hezekiah was on the throne, all right? And the guy comes from Assyria and they start talking trash, all right? You talk trash to your opponent, right? Because that's to intimidate them. But what's the intimidation here? Silence. Just silence. They're walking around. That's got to be unnerving, isn't it? When you're waiting on somebody to talk trash and say all this stuff and yell at you and scream at you and try to intimidate you, and they're just silent. What were the conversations like back at the camp? Were they confident? Were they confused? Were they thinking, okay, we do this again tomorrow, right? Did any of them go, yeah, I heard this guy. I heard one guy up on the wall. He was yelling this at us. And this guy was yelling this at us. When we went to do our race, we were at the hotel. And we had this little peewee soccer team that was there. And, you know, every one of them had a story about what they did in the game, of when they did it. And I kicked this, and you should have seen this guy. And, I mean, it's 12 8-year-olds arguing with each other, just talking, telling stories over each other the whole time. And I get that, but do we get this on this story? What'd you do, Bob? I just kind of walked around, went back. Still don't know I still don't know what's going on. But Joshua believes this, and I'm going to follow him. I want to see what happens. So what do? Joshua got up there early the next morning, all right? Gets up early the next morning. The priests took the ark of the Lord, verse 13, and the 7 priests carrying the trumpets marched in front of the ark of the Lord. And while the trumpets were blowing, the armed troops went in front of them and the rear guard and behind the ark of the Lord. And the second day, they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. And they did this for 6 days. Do the conversations change? What do you think? At what point do the conversations change? Do they start to evolve? Are they still going, oh, okay, we got to do this again? How many of them start to lean on their own understanding? Would you? Would you start to lean on your understanding? And what are you thinking? Why exactly are we doing this? Doesn't God know this isn't doing any good? Doesn't God understand this? We're not supposed to lean on it. What are we supposed to do? Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust the Lord with how much? How much? That's a lot, isn't it? They used to say of Martin Luther that he would go into the confessions and he would be in there for hours. They thought he was trying to get out of doing work, trying to get out of doing his chores. Somebody asked him one time, why are you, man, you're a good guy. Why are you spending so much time in the confession? He said, because I know I did not give God my all today. Trust the Lord with all your heart. And I wonder if there were some guys that might throw out a question or might start to hint at being confused or doubting and what's going on. And I'm not sure if this is the right way. And I don't know. And I hope there were guys among them that said, no. We're trusting God. We're trusting God with this. Silence that talk. I don't want to hear that talk. That's not going to help us. That's what people need in the church. Amen? Your silence in this church is cancer. You need to be leading, men. You need to be leading out. Your silence amongst your church family is cancer. I hope there were people silencing any conversations that came up of, no, we ain't doubting this. We're going forward. This is going to be awesome. You stay with us. And I hope they place courage into the hearts of those men who are starting to doubt. See, that's our job. It's not my job. It's our job. We're a church family, all right? So I hope they were having these conversations, but I hope there were men in there. All right, ready to get to the big day? And I wonder, are you nervous? Are you nervous for the seventh day mark? What do you think? Is this just another day? We're just going to walk around, all right? Hasn't it been kind of boring? Last 6 days, well, here we go. All right, let's go home, all right? Oh, we get to do it again tomorrow? Okay, here we go. We'll just walk around, all right? How many more days of this we got? Okay, 4 more days. All right, we walk around, all right? And you get to that 6th day, and you're like, okay, we're done with the 1 day thing, right? Or 1 time, right? Tomorrow's going to be the day. Because tomorrow, he said, they're going to blow the trumpets, we're going to shout, and the walls are going to fall down. Now, how early are you waking up? Anybody? Anybody ready to go on day 7? Y'all don't seem like it. You seem like you've heard this story before. All right? Come on now. It's got to be new. Jump in the story here. All right? Early on the 7th day, right? Not, okay, here we go again. Why do you get up early? Because you can't wait for the day to start. Don't make me get on you about coffee again, all right? You don't need an alarm clock. Your day, your passion should get you up in the morning. And theirs did, right? Don't mess with me, Bobby, all right? Early on the 7th day, they started at dawn. I imagine it takes a while to walk around this city. It's a big city, all right? They started at dawn, marched around the city 7 times in the same way. Now, how psyched out are the Jerichoans at this point? Or are they kind of bored? They go, here they go again. Oh, they're going again today. And there again, and again, and again. And you're thinking, man, they're probably tired, all right? Yeah, it's a long way around the city. They're marching around, all right? Started dawn, marched around the city 7 times. That was the only day they marched around the city 7 times. Thank you for doing that clarification thing. After the 7th time, the priest blew the trumpets, and Joshua said to the people, shout. To which one guy actually shouted and didn't wait for the rest of the instructions and went, oh man, my bad, sorry, just me. Because when I read shout with an exclamation point, what do? I shout, okay? And he goes, I'm not done, all right? Shout, for the Lord has given you, same thing, given into your hand the city. But the city and everything in it are set apart to the Lord for destruction. Only Rahab the prostitute and everyone with her in their house will live because she hid the men we sent. But keep yourselves from the things set apart, or you will be set apart for destruction. If you take any of those things, those cursed things or set apart things, you will be set apart. You will set apart the camp of Israel for destruction and bring disaster on it. For all the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron are dedicated to the Lord and must go into the Lord's treasury. And everybody's going, can we shout yet? Is it now do we shout? Are you done? All right. So the people shouted and the trumpet sounded. And when they heard the blast of the trumpet, is anybody noticing the repetitive nature of Hebrew literature? All right. It'll say the same thing over and over and over again. So just roll with it. All right. When they heard the blast of the trumpet, the drawn out blast of the trumpet, The people gave a great shout, a great ruah, and the walls collapsed. Or as the song goes, they came a-tumbling down. Thank you. Wow, VBS meant so much to all of you. I can tell. The people advanced into the city, each man straight ahead. The symbolism is they were surrounding the city on this march, and all of them just sort of converged on the city as the walls fell. And they captured the city. Verse 21, they completely destroyed everything in the city with the sword. Every man and woman, both young and old, and every ox, sheep, and donkey. Anybody got a little uncomfortable right there? What's the accusation? That God promotes genocide. Look who they killed. Look who they killed. Upon God's instructions, right? Every man and woman, both what? Young and old. Why would God do that? That doesn't seem very nice. And God is nice, right? That's one of those things where you just go, no. Don't ever use nice in our human vernacular and our culture when you refer to God. Because God's a whole nother level of good and beautiful and holy. And our little nice thing, culturally acceptable nice thing, has you can't even use those terms when you start to talk about the divine. Why? Why is he killing all of these people? Is he promoting genocide? Come back a little bit here. Go to Genesis 15. I want you to see this so that you can make this point if anyone calls you on this and say, well, God promotes genocide. Say, no. In Genesis 15, Abram's having a little moment of doubts. And he goes, God, I don't understand. I did what you said. I came to this land. I've been here. I don't have any kids yet. And if I die today, my servant is going to take over, and he's going to get all my stuff. Where's my kid? Where's all the promises you gave to me? And God says, not a problem. Let's make a covenant. So he cuts animals in half, puts them on either side, symbolic of if I break the covenant, what happened to those animals happens to me. That's a bad thing, right? And he gives them these signs. He says, I will give you this land, and I will give you offspring, as many as the sand in the sea, stars in the sky. He says that my sign, I'm going to validate this promise with this. For 400 years, you'll be strangers in the land, and you will be enslaved and oppressed. And I will judge the nation that oppressed you, and you will plunder that land. Okay? Now pick me up, because I'm right here, and I want you to see these words. Verse 13. The Lord said to Abram, know this for certain, your offspring will be resident aliens for 400 years in a land that does not belong to them, and will be enslaved and oppressed. However, I will judge the nations they serve, plagues, and after you will go out with many possessions. Remember what happened at the Passover? After the Passover? They're like, hey, can I have all your stuff? And they're like, yes, take it, go away. Tell your God to go away too. Go away, you just go away. But you will go to your ancestors in peace. You, Abraham, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation, they will return here. Levi goes in, Kohath, Amram, Moses. In the 4th generation, they will return here to the land of Canaan. Why? Anytime you see the word for, ask the question, why? For the iniquity of the Amorites has not yet, it's going to take 4 generations here, some 4th generation, I'm going to come back, has not yet reached its full measure. So when the 4th generation rolls around, when Levi dies off, when Kohath dies off, when Amram dies off, when Moses takes over and Moses leads the people out of Egypt, out of this slavery, into the promised land or right to the edge of it, what can we say about the measure of the sin of the Amorites? It's complete. It's reached its full measure. And what happens in that case? They will be judged. And God uses the nation of Israel to judge the people of Jericho. And he destroys them all. Why? Because the full measure of their sin has matured, perfected, been completed. So God simply uses Joshua and his armies to destroy all of them. Is that genocide or is that judgment? Because here's what you need to understand. In the last days, it will come to this very simple rule. Those who follow Christ will be saved. And those who reject Christ will be destroyed. And they will face the wrath of God. But we who are followers, we who are believers, believing ones in Christ, who took our wrath for us, who took the wrath on that cross, we are not appointed to wrath. So what we see here in the story is we see what is going to transpire at the end of days. There will be a judgment. We see it in the sheep and the goats. We see it in the great white throne judgment. We see it at the judgment seat of Christ. Some will be saved and go into eternal life. Some will die and go into eternal punishment. That's the way it plays out. Now, the question is, where did the nice people go? Same rule. The believers in Christ, not appointed to wrath. Non-believers, I don't care how nice you are, wrath. The only question is, do you want to hand that wrath over to the one who died for you in your place? So they destroy the city. Imagine what it's like in the camp of the Israelites as they're standing over the burned rubble of Jericho. As they have defeated the city, God has given them the hands. Can you imagine this? Are they excited? Is this a good day? Is anybody like, well, I've seen this before. We walk around the city, we yell, the walls fall down. It's like Tuesday, all right? No. They're ecstatic. What is heaven like in this moment? What's heaven like in this moment? Is this pretty exciting? The angel's like, man, I wish I could have got in there. I would have done this, and I would have done that, and I would have done whatever, all right? Because they're talking trash up there in heaven because they're warriors. They're ready to go, all right? But God just went, hey, trumpets, shout, boom, burn the city, all done. Here's what I want you to see, though. I'm going to kind of elaborate the story here. God is there on his throne. All of heaven's rejoicing. This has been a great moment. The walls came a-tumbling down. Everybody's saved. We're marching in. We're taking the promised land. And a tear rolls down the face of God. Michael's like, everybody's excited, God. What's going on? What? Listen to what he says. She stayed in the house. They're like, what? No. God's like, I know, that was awesome. But look at her. Look at my daughter. Look at my precious creation who's been abused and destroyed for the last 20 years of her life as a prostitute. She stayed in the house. When the trumpets blew and the shout came out and all the walls came tumbling down, she stayed. She stayed in the house. She trusted me. She trusted in what I promised her that I would do for her. You ever read Psalm 46? We know Psalm 46:10, right? Be still and know that I'm God. So go sit by a quiet stream somewhere and just be still, right? You may want to read the first 9 verses to understand the beauty of the 10th verse. Because the first 9 verses talk about mountains falling into the sea, rocks crushing, earth trembling. And in the midst of all that, be still and know that I'm God. And she looks at Jericho. He looks down at Jericho and he sees all the rubble, but he's focused on one thing. She stayed in the house. She trusted me. She trusted me and all her family with her. Look at her. She's bringing all her family with her because she trusted in me. Now her family gets to live too. That's my daughter. That's my daughter, this Canaanite pagan prostitute. It kind of has a feel of the thief on the cross, doesn't it? In his dying moment, he reaches out for God, and God says, come on home, my son. And in her potentially dying moment, Rahab stayed in the house because she trusted God. She wasn't about to run out. In Hebrews 11, we have her in the story. Think about this. Hebrews 11, Hall of Faith, like people like to call it. Like 12 guys get attaboys. And Rahab's in there. The Canaanite prostitute is in there. Why? Because she stayed in the house. The two spies that had gone to her house were told, hey, go get them out of the house. Tell them they can come out now. Can you imagine what these people were like? Because when the trumpets blew and the shouts came and the walls came tumbling down, how were they doing in the house? Built into the wall, they came tumbling down. I don't even know how that works. Somehow they're in there and they fell around her, all right? But she stayed in there. She said, I'm not going anywhere because I will trust in the Lord with all my heart and lean not on my own understanding. In all my ways I will acknowledge him and he will direct my path, and he told me to stay. But not only that, he told me to tie this scarlet cord around my window. I imagine when the two spies came to get her, they kind of had to lure them out of the house. It's okay, you can come out now. No, we're staying in the house because God told us not to leave. No, we're here with God. Or, yeah, we're here with God, not he's with us, all right? Got to get that straight. And I think she walked over and she cut a piece of the cord. And for the rest of her life, I think she carried a piece of this cord around with her. Not knowing what it meant, only that there was something about this cord that saved me. The text goes on to say that they were brought out of Jericho, and they lived outside the camp of Israel. Now, here's what I love about Rahab. Rahab very easily could have said, you know what, I'm free now. I'm good to go now. I can do whatever I want now. But here's what I imagine with Rahab. Rahab sat on the edge of that camp saying, I want to be as close to this God as I can. So even though I can't be in the camp, I'm going to be right on the edge of it. And she lives her life, this scarlet cord still clinging in her hand, not knowing why. And all of a sudden, some Jewish little fella goes, Rahab over there, she's kind of cute. His name was Salmon. Some people pronounce it salmon. I don't know. And this Salmon goes, Dad, I think, can I marry her? And her dad's like, you mean the prostitute from Jericho? Yeah. Because she sits there on the edge of our camp day after day, longing to be a part of us with the scarlet cord in her hand. Dad goes, all right. They have a son named Boaz. Good kid. Good businessman. Godly man. You see, this pagan prostitute, as close as she can get to the camp of God of Israel, marries a godly man. They raise a godly child who one day is approached by Ruth, the Moabitess, and says, Dad, can I bring her into the camp? And they have a son named Obed, who has a son named Jesse, who has a son named David. We call him King David. And God speaks of him as a man after God's own heart. How are you doing with your offspring? Look at Rahab's. Look at Rahab's offspring, still clutching, not even knowing why. Eventually, she'll give birth. Her generations will give birth to a man named Jesus. And then she found out why. My question to you today is real simple. Do you have the scarlet cord clutched in your hand? Is it a defining, distinguishing mark on your life? We're going to take communion today. Come on, Ethan. I want to give you the chance today to say, yes, this is a distinguishing mark in my life. This is the controlling thing. And it's not just for the moment, it's for the lifetime. And it's something that you're going to pass on to your children and to their children. And maybe 4 generations, your descendant will be called a man after God's own heart. But only if you are faithful. See, here's the thing. If God means anything to you, he must mean everything. And if he just means something, he really means nothing. Take your time. The way we do offering around here, we have the elements over here and over here. We're going to sing a song. You get up when you're ready. When you're ready to say, this is the defining, distinguishing mark in my life. You get up. And if it's not, just stay seated. Stay seated. But settle it today. Settle this today. All right? Y'all pray with me.